All right, welcome back to another coffee chat, everybody. Today we have the wonderful Dr. Erica Schweitzer, who's a fabulous psychologist, but also our clinical director here at the practice. Um, I believe that we are going to get into a fun discussion about boundaries. I will let her take it away. Tell us a little bit about yourself, but also tell us about boundaries.
Sure. So a little bit about me. I've been practicing since early 2000s, before coming to Room to Breathe. I worked at City Colleges of Chicago. I opened and ran a wellness center and a training program, which is how I know you and how I know
Yeah.
Sarah and how I know a whole bunch of people who were wonderful enough to work with me there. And I think boundaries is just one of those topics that is everywhere and nowhere. And there is so much work that you can do in it, but you can also have fun. Like it doesn't have to be a terrible thing. You can bring some sass to it.
Hmm.
So it's one of the reasons why it's one of the topics that I like talking about. And it seems like it comes up with everybody. So I've never met anybody who's like, I'm totally good. I don't need any help. My
Right.
boundaries are solid. I never run into conflict. I don't ever have an uncomfortable feeling. I'm like, I haven't met that person yet. So
Does that even exist though?
I doubt it. I doubt it. Because it's organic. So they're supposed to shift. Boundaries
Right.
aren't supposed to be brick walls. So they
Uh-huh.
should shift over time and you probably have to revisit them
Hmm.
and do different things with them.
I mean, and like, God knows how our boundaries shift and morph as we evolve as human beings, but also as society around us evolves with everything that's going on now. Who knows what's going to happen a couple of years from now or whenever. Um, so I think it's always a super important conversation to have.
Mhm. Yep,
Always relevant.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that you recommended the fabulous book, Set Boundaries and Find Peace, which
Here. I could I
I've
could do
read
I could do a
every
plug
so much.
for it. It's on my bookshelf right here.
Yes, yes. Highly recommend for anyone that doesn't know that this book exists. Beautiful book, great way to get information and really start doing the hard work. But Erica, how do you usually get started with introducing boundaries to someone that maybe has no idea?
I think it usually introduces itself when someone is irritated, they
Mm,
have resentment, they are disappointed or feel taken advantage of.
mm,
And it also, I think, comes up when we find ourselves talking a lot about what other people are doing that we wish that they would stop.
mm,
And part of the way I address it is, what is it that you are or are not doing to take care of yourself? Because if you're taking care of yourself, then what the other person does matters less. So
mm-hmm,
it isn't that your bestie shouldn't be calling you at 3 o'clock in the morning. It is that your phone could be off, and then it wouldn't
mm,
matter if they called. And that's a boundary,
mm,
right?
mm-hmm,
That instead of you can ask your bestie and say, please don't call me at 3 o'clock in the morning. Or you can block them and you can turn a setting on so that they can call you all they want and it's not going to get through. Or you can turn your phone off because you are not, in fact, a 911 respondent and it isn't your job to show up to put their
mm,
house, like to put the flames out of their house or to hold their open head wound, right? You're not a
mm-hmm,
911 responder, so you don't need to be reached at 3 o'clock in the morning.
mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
that boundary, I can't just tell everybody to do that because some people do need to be reached at 3 o'clock in the morning.
right. I think that goes into something that I remember you saying way back when you were still training me. Don't choke on your teeth.
Just always a little worried what will come back to haunt me.
Oh my God, never. When you were still training me, you had said something about like the Willy Wonka golden tickets. I think that's something that most people are familiar with. Of like, we only have a certain number of golden tickets to give out, and those are the people that if there is a call at 3 a.m., we're literally going to drop everything and answer it because
Mhm.
it's a family member or a really close friend, or it's like an eight or higher, like five alarm emergency, and we're going to be there, but we're not going to give those tickets out to absolutely everybody. There's only a handful. And so I think that goes in a nice way about boundaries too, of how are we taking care of ourselves? And who are we going to drop everything for to maybe break a few boundaries so that we're able to care for the people that are important to us?
Yes. And for everybody who hasn't had this conversation with you and I about the golden ticket, one
Yeah.
of the first protests I always hear from people as soon as I talk about setting a boundary, about saying no, about not picking up the phone is, but what about
Hmm.
that little phrase in therapy is always a protest about like, well, but what about this or what about that? And it's like, okay, boundaries are not meant to be brick walls. They're not meant to be that there's no changes to it. You get to have people who you will always show up and bail them out of jail, always pick up the phone at 3 o'clock in the morning. But the point is that if everybody holds a golden ticket,
Mm.
then you have no boundaries. And you're going to be exhausted and worn out and resentful, and all of those relationships are going to suffer. But if it's just your mom that has that golden ticket, you're going to sleep fine most of the time,
Great.
right? Or if it's your kid or you can give it to whoever you want.
Yeah.
Well, there just shouldn't be more than a couple out there,
Great. Yeah.
proportionate to how many people are in your life.
Right. Really, I think it's a good question to ask. Well, who would I wake up at 3 a.m. to answer a phone call from? I mean, that's like a really good way to gauge about like who does get that golden ticket.
Sure. Also, I mean, and part of that consideration is who's going to use it carefully.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, speaking of phones, because I do think like when you brought it up about how the world keeps changing, this is one of the things that the world keeps shifting, and so now people have access to us in a way that they never had before. So, I
Yeah.
grew up in a time era before answering machines, where if you weren't home to answer the phone, it just rang, and you never knew that they called you. Like you just didn't know. Like go I was gone. So I have no idea who called me. It could have been three telemarketers. It could have been my best friend every 15 minutes. No one but my house plants knew that somebody was calling my house.
Yeah.
And right. And so then it moved to the answering machine of like, oh, now I know who called. And now it's that there's an illusion that somebody should be able to reach me at all times and I should pick up.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right. And so we need different boundaries now than we did before. And
Mhm.
that has to shift. But I mean, there's a setting for someone to break through if they call twice in a row.
Yeah, that
But
do
you
not disturb setting is beautiful.
only very elite people have their name listed on my phone to be able to do
Same.
that because those people, if they call twice at 3 o'clock in the morning, they do need me and I want to
Mhm.
be there for them in that way.
Mhm.
Everybody else is just going to get my voicemail
Right. Right.
because it's on Do Not Disturb and they don't have the ability to break through that way
Mhm. Mhm.
because they should be calling 911.
Yeah. Um, I know you said earlier about like taking care of yourself is an important part of deciding what your boundaries are and setting boundaries too. Um, Say a little more about that.
So I think some of that is about us figuring out what my resources are, what I have to offer, or what I have to give other people,
Mm,
and my natural limitations, right? So just trying to think of an example. As an older person, my energy is now different.
mm,
My priorities about sleep have shifted because I don't function well anymore if I don't get enough sleep. When
right.
I was 20, I could stay up all night. And so I could just do different things. But now I'm going to be a crabbier person. So I'm not going to be as loving. I'm not going to be as attentive. My brain functioning is different now if I don't get
Mm,
sleep. And so I have to make decisions about my natural limitations. And this, I think people with chronic illnesses pay better attention to it because they're more heightened in their awareness of the changes of what they have to offer. And I think folks who don't have chronic illness or don't haven't hit a point with age or other limitations where they feel those limitations, they push themselves too far too often.
Hmm.
So it is about figuring out what are my natural limitations, what are the resources I have to give, and who do I want to be when I show up. So if I want to be a loving, kind, compassionate person, if I want to be able to give you my attention, then I have to pay attention to my natural limitations and I have to protect them.
Hmm.
So you and I were actually supposed to do this last week, but I started developing a terrible migraine.
Hmm.
And there are some things that I can't move in my life that it's like, okay, take the medication, do what you can, like buck up and like maybe show up, but a little bit less of a version of myself, but it'll be okay. It'll be good enough.
Yeah.
But this was something that we could move. And so it
Hmm.
just didn't have to be as hard. And I could spend my resources that day doing things that I couldn't move as opposed to something I could move.
Right.
And so that's an example of like figuring out for each one of us, what do I have to offer? How do I want to show up? And do I need to make an adjustment to be the person I want to be when I show up?
Hmm. I think, speaking of like protest or maybe pushback on things that we might get from people we see or people in our lives when we're setting boundaries is I hear a lot of like, but I feel so guilty for having put myself first, or doesn't that feel a little selfish for like not
Mhm.
showing up for other people when I could have, even though I felt ill? What would you say to
Uh-huh.
those types of ideas? Which, by the way, I've also personally said this to Erica too. So it's
Uh-huh.
not just
Uh-huh.
other people.
And
But
you know what my first question is going to be is how did racism, misogyny, homophobia, or another
uh,
ism tell you that you don't get to be the center of your own life?
yep. Another one that you often go to is, well, how'd that work out for you though? Like, did it work out well that you were sick and went about your day instead of taking care of yourself?
Yeah. Is your
Yep.
friendship doing really well when you showed up crabby and you were a jerk to them? Like, is that
Right.
is that helping?
Yeah.
But so much of that, like, I feel guilty is because someone else is benefiting and they told you you don't have the right to your own wellness.
Or the power
That's
to
not
do something
okay.
about it, maybe. Yeah.
What'd you say?
I saw the power to do something about it, maybe. A
Say a
part
little
of
bit
it
more.
is about like taking your power back instead of
Oh,
like giving other people that have told you that you don't have the right to do certain things, but like feeling empowered to say, no, I actually do have the right to take care of myself in order to
mhm.
show up the best version I can.
Yeah.
Sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
No, you're okay. Absolutely. Yeah. Because misogyny tells women that they're supposed to work themselves to the bone for everybody else and that their goal and purpose in life is to serve other people. Sorry? No, it's not. That is something that you do after you make sure that you're healthy.
Hmm.
Because if your long-term goal is service, if your long-term goal is to raise children, is to have a family, is to be successful in a career, is to volunteer with your religious organization, is to help people who have less than you, like whatever your goal is, that is all dependent on you surviving and being healthy enough to actually do those things.
Hmm.
So it's not selfish, it's practical.
Hmm.
And we can look at who has a privileged status in the world and the messages that they are told, which is get your sleep, get your food, get your workout, get your needs met, and then go conquer the world. But they are not told hurt yourself for the value of other people. They're so like, no, 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 you are valuable. Take care of yourself and then go conquer the world, rescue this, do that.
Hmm. Isn't it
So,
interesting? Yeah, how like different people, different kinds of people from different walks of life were told different things about their right to their bodies and their boundaries in order to take care of themselves.
well, this wasn't the nature of our topic, but systems of oppression are perpetuated because some are doing the labor for others.
Right.
And, right? So
Yeah.
that's how they
It
keep
all
functioning.
intertwines. It all
Yeah,
intertwines. So
it
it's
all
fine.
intertwines.
Yeah. Um, what about individuals that have maybe given away more golden tickets than they have to give, in
Yeah,
essence,
I
or
know.
like
That's
have,
hard.
yeah, that have like, let's say someone has very few boundaries and wants to do so much for other people that they do neglect themselves and not take care of themselves and all of those things. How would one go about setting boundaries and managing maybe the side effects of that?
So there's some real distress tolerance and discomfort for ourselves that we have to navigate when we're realizing that what we have figured out has not worked so far, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to minimize. There is a payoff in which things start to feel better, but I don't think it starts right away. I think it is first
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable to sit with, oh my God, I feel guilty, right? Like,
Yeah.
where is this guilt coming from? And
Yeah.
spending some time like unpacking that guilt of like, did I actually do something wrong or have I just been told it's wrong?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's tough because we do have to make choices in our life. Like we can't actually do everything. So you can have enormous dreams. You can have great things that you want to do or ways that you want to be or ways that you want to fill your time. But time is finite. And so there will have to be choices about different things. And it's hard to sit with. I have to make a choice. So something is going to get a no. Which one's going to get a no? And I might have some grief about that. I might have some sadness
Mm-hmm.
about that. Like that might actually be hard because I wanted to be able to do it all.
Yeah.
And to put some of those down and say, I can't have all of my dreams. I can't meet all of the needs of everybody. I have to put them somewhat into a hierarchy and decide to what extent I'm going to do each one of them.
Yeah.
And so I think that's just honesty about the part that will prevent people. But the trick of it is that not deciding is also deciding. And
Mm.
something I've said before is like if you have 15 balls in the air and you are falling apart and getting sick and you don't have enough sleep and you haven't been eating enough and you are getting cranky and resentful, you can either choose which one of the 15 balls get put down on the ground or life will pick for you.
Mm-hmm.
And life will never pick the one that you're okay with.
Mm.
So I can either decide I'm going to I'm going to do less of this activity or I'm going to spend less time with my friends, but I can keep the friendship. Or I can keep going with the 15 balls, and some of those friends are going to decide that they've had enough, that they don't like the way
Yeah.
that I'm showing up, and they're going to end the friendship.
Yeah.
Or worse, I'm going to be so tired and I'm going to be driving someplace and I'm going to fall asleep and I'm going to get hurt or I'm going to hurt somebody else.
Mm.
So when there is too much and I am not doing okay, either I pick what I put down or life will pick for you.
Mm-hmm.
If you're doing great, fine. Don't worry about it. You know what I mean? Like if you have
Right.
all the energy and you're like, this is amazing. Maybe I could pick up another ball. Like, have at it. You're great. You're fine.
Yeah.
Don't mess with it. Don't mess with it. You don't have
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
And that's where it's the very individual, right? Because what the
Mm-hmm.
boundaries are for one person, for their own health and being okay, is very different than for another person. But
Mm-hmm.
everybody has a set of limits, and those
Yeah.
do shift throughout our life. So what we set 10 years ago probably won't work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, when you talk about distress tolerance,
Mm.
how do you go about guiding folks through that to get to the other side where we are more comfortable setting boundaries and like having less of this like guilt feeling?
Well, I'm a big fan of the smallest ones first,
Mm-hmm.
little things, and delaying a little bit rather than saying no. So if you feel
Mm-hmm.
overwhelmed by your email, a boundary might be close your email for 1 hour per day. And then you can open it up and you can do whatever you were normally going to do,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or start putting an out of office. on your email so that it responds when people contact you and gives a message of like, hey, I'm away, right? So start with passive things that you can kind of like set something. The phone is great for that. You can choose settings and then it does the work for you. And so you can have a little bit of breathing room and you can see how little things change,
Mm-hmm.
or you can start to get feedback, but in an easier way. So break
Mm-hmm.
it all the way down to the smallest pieces first,
Mm-hmm.
because there's always going to be a couple of those steps where nothing has changed, but you've already gained something back
Mm-hmm.
and getting a little bit of that taste of that reward.
Mm-hmm.
DB
Excuse
DBT
me.
has tons to say about distress tolerance, far better than I do. But I think one of the things is to breathe through it and go, is this an uncomfortable pain or is this a killing pain?
Mm-hmm.
Because if it's not a killing pain, you don't have to respond immediately.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of us
And
find out that when we do set those boundaries for things like phones or emails, that the world didn't fall apart if we waited an hour or a couple of hours to answer,
Mhm.
which is enlightening. Relieving, kind of freeing, but very enlightening.
Yeah, and I think it can also bring up some pain because we start to realize some of the stuff that we did that didn't matter as much as we thought it did.
Mm, yeah,
And so there can be some grief over this could have been different for me before now.
yeah.
And
Uh,
so
yeah,
just
I think
holding
you
some
said this earlier.
compassion there.
Yeah, I think you said this earlier. Like, I can work hard and be in pain through this, or I can set a boundary and do this later and be a better version of myself, show up better. Some things don't have to be that hard. I think you said this to me a couple weeks ago when we were talking in another meeting too. You can choose to do it the hard way, but it doesn't have to be that hard. Like you can ask
Mhm.
for help, set the boundary, do the thing that's going to help you do it in a more effective and less painful way.
For the things that you can, there's some
Right.
stuff that you can't. There's some stuff that you can't, where you have to show up, you have to struggle through. It's going to take a lot out of you, and there is no way to make it softer or easier or
Mm.
like there are those things in life, and that's fine. But knowing that we have to show up for those, what are the other ones you're going to fix?
Yeah. No, that's an awesome point. Yeah. Another thing that comes to mind is when we do set boundaries or when we start to set boundaries and other folks have reactions to the boundaries that we set.
Hmm.
Can you speak a little bit to that?
Hmm. Yep. So if other people are accustomed to getting things from you and they have no intention of reciprocating, they
Mm-hmm.
tend to get pissed.
Mm-hmm.
And I am not speaking ill of those individuals, because if I was standing in front of an ATM that was spitting out free money, I would be an idiot for walking away before it stopped, right? Be like, you're just
Yeah.
gonna give me free money. You're just gonna do stuff for me. You're gonna pick up the phone every single time I call. You're gonna pay for the meal every time I ask. You're gonna come over. You're gonna like, I would be an idiot for walking away from that before it stopped. So I'm not being harsh on the other person.
Yeah.
It makes sense that they would keep taking as long as you're giving, right? If you're going to
Mm-hmm.
give free labor to your employer by working 20 extra hours for no pay, like they would be an idiot to not take it, right? So there's going to be a response when you stop. And the response of the other person, they are telling on themselves. Because if their response is like, "Oh, I'm gonna miss you," like, okay, let's make sure that we plan time to get together. I know you don't have as much time anymore, but like, okay, let's pick a time. You tell me, is it better if I come to you? Like, you've always been coming to me. Do you need me to come to you? Can I see you? Like, oh, I'm gonna miss you. That was so much fun and like that was really cool. But and I want you to take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we do this? Right?
Yeah.
That's a healthy person.
Uh-huh.
If they're like, how dare you? How dare you no longer do all this labor for me for free? How dare you no longer pick up the phone with every thought that I have that I want to call you for? How dare you put your health before whatever it is that we're doing? Instead of taking that there's something wrong with your boundary, my hope is that you'll look at that and go, oh, I should have set this before
Yeah.
because this person's not on my side.
Right. Yeah.
This person is angry that I'm taking care of myself, that I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to make choices, that maybe I'm experimenting, maybe I'm making a poor choice, but they support me in like, hey, you got to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
So the other person's response, it's okay if they're uncomfortable, if they're like, wait, what? Like, well, I don't understand. What are we doing here? Like, this is weird. I thought this was fine, right? They can be confused. They can even have grief and sadness, or they can kind of be irritated, like, but I thought this was fine. That's all
Right.
fine. You're waiting to see if they go, oh, this is so that you feel healthy. Oh, okay. All right.
Right.
I can do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right?
What? Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Mm-mm.
I was just gonna say, what about those people that maybe aren't as healthy or have a lot of healing to do for themselves and are the constant pushbackers on the boundaries that we set?
Mhm. Again, they're telling you more and more information about themselves. And here's the thing about boundaries is that boundaries and compassion are best friends. So if someone is persistently pushing me for more and I don't have it to give, if I hold my boundary, I can have more patience with them.
Mm-hmm.
I can have more compassion for like, ooh, you're actually not doing very well. If you're impulsively calling me at 3 o'clock in the morning, you're not doing okay. Like, that's
Yeah.
hard, right? But I can have compassion for you because I'm well rested.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And our boundaries are about us and about what I'm going to do if someone pushes or tries to cross them. Boundaries are not about what I want or need you to do.
Mm-hmm.
I can ask you for your support. I can ask you to collaborate. But if you choose not to, it's my job, which means the phone has to get turned off. I need to leave the room if
Mm-hmm.
they start calling me names, right? I don't have to confront. I don't have to get into an argument, but it's my job to decide where is my boundary and what am I going to do about it if no one wants to help me with it.
Yeah.
And again, parts of that can be sad, they can be painful. There's a loss to it. We It can be really painful to realize that someone that you care about doesn't have the capacity to care
Mm-hmm.
back in the same way, that they've got their own battle or their own barriers or their own limitations, and they aren't able to do this with us. And so we have to do it by ourselves.
Yeah.
And I can keep that compassion for them because I'm not getting hurt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I can be
Beautiful way to put
patient
it.
for their slower journey, right? If
Right.
we're in
Yeah.
different spots. I can be patient and say like, I can see this person's really working hard on stuff and it's real slow for them and that's okay. But I can be patient because I'm not getting hurt in the meantime. I'm not building up resentment. I'm not angry with them. I'm not irritated with them. I haven't been disrupted.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. No, that's beautiful. I don't think I could have said it any better.
Oh,
Hmm.
I think about it a lot. But there's discomfort in there. It's not all an immediate payoff.
Yeah. I imagine it's been a long journey for you to get here to be able to be so eloquent about the topic too.
Mhm.
We
I
all
can
have our
look back
own.
over my life and see the wreckage of damaged and broken and wildly misgiving boundaries of different places and the ones I've crossed and the ones I've pushed on, right?
Right. Yeah.
100%.
Just just like we set our own boundaries or have to learn to set our own boundaries, other people have theirs too. And so we can always learn a lesson from how we're treating other people and how we want to be treated in return
Mhm.
in that sense.
And when you hear someone else's boundaries, when they say no, when they say I don't want to or I can't or no thank you, recognizing the emotional distress that so say it's you and me and I've
Hmm.
asked you for something and you say no, but I'm very anxious, I'm very upset, I'm very dysregulated, recognizing how hard it is to hear someone else's no and recognize like, okay, this does not mean that the relationship is over. It doesn't mean
Hmm.
that they hate me. It means that they're taking care of themselves. And I have to figure out how to regulate not getting the thing that I wanted and how to regulate enough to hear someone else's no and either switch up what I'm asking for, right? Or tolerate the distress or the grief or the sadness or the loss of whatever's happening, right?
Hmm.
And take care of myself in that way. But it is hard to be on the other side and to hear a no, especially if you used to get a yes and breathe through it, right? It's the same thing. Is this a killing pain? Or
Yeah,
is this an uncomfortable pain? Like, I'm
right.
not dying. They're not telling me they no longer want to speak to me. They're saying no to something I'm asking for. Like, okay, keep breathing. How do I adjust?
Hmm. Yeah. Probably one of the most important lessons that I've learned in my life over time that I use for myself. I use
Yeah.
for the people in my life, but I also use with my own clients of like a lot of this is a healing pain or a healing uncomfortableness or
Hmm.
uncomfortableness that we have to hold space for. It's not a dying uncomfortable or like the world is ending uncomfortable. Someone's
Hmm.
no right now might be a yes next time, and that's their prerogative, as is yours, right?
Hmm.
Nothing, it doesn't mean anything's forever. It doesn't mean they're mad at you, like you said. It's just how it has to be for right now so people can attune to themselves.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
typically there's more than one way to achieve something.
Yeah. I think we forget that sometimes.
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard. It's not easy. I think you can break it down into simpler things at first.
Hmm.
And I think it's important to acknowledge like it is uncomfortable to set a boundary or to change a boundary. It's about the payoff and the long term. You
Hmm.
can preserve relationships. It gives you more runway with a relationship. If you're struggling with a friend or with a partner or with a family member, starting to have boundaries that take care of you and help you remain calm and well rested or safe and stable give you more time and space to work on the relationship.
Hmm.
If you're getting hurt, it's going to be very quick and explosive.
Hmm. Yeah, fair enough. Um, as we wrap up here, were there any thoughts, anything that you wanted to cover that maybe I didn't ask?
You can have fun with it.
Say more.
So it doesn't always have to be boring and like stodgy. Um, I think it's important to bring humor into things to kind of like make a little bit of fun of ourselves and other people to a certain extent, with love, right? About how much importance we have given to things that aren't life or death. There's plenty of things that are life or death. You don't need to make jokes during those. You don't need to make fun of people. But I mean, if somebody like the phone call, if somebody's like, I couldn't reach you and it was 3 o'clock in the morning, like I was in a really bad place. Like, why didn't you pick up? I'd be like, because I'm not 911, right? Like you can bring a little humor to it. Your out of office could say, hey, I'm out in the woods. I'm not available. I'm not, see, I said humor and then I'm not coming up with very good options for ones.
Oh, I
Um,
remember one. You there. I think
God,
there's this one time I like had messaged you about something like on 10 p.m. on like a Saturday or Sunday, and then I hadn't heard from you again. I think till like Monday, and so I was
yeah,
like, "Hey, did you have a chance to look at it?" And your response was, "You mean the thing that you sent me in the middle of the night on a weekend?" No, I haven't. And I'm like, you
yeah,
know what? Fair
I
enough,
was,
Erica. Fair enough.
yeah, I
My
was a little
bad.
sassy.
My bad, fair enough. But you're right. Like that little sassy, little humor, and still
Yeah,
got the point across.
yeah. And I was like, nope, but now it's Monday. And so now I will. Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and it's so funny. I'm not thinking of anything that's funny. But having a little sense of humor about it, having a little mischief. One thing I do say frequently, so folks who have worked with me or trained with me will know this, is that when we're feeling guilty or someone else is trying to shame us
Mm.
because we've said no, my stance is if they have crossed a boundary or they're pushing a boundary, they're the ones who brought the discomfort to the party. So you should be a good host and make sure you share. Because people are like, well, I don't want to cause a scene or I don't want to make anybody uncomfortable and be like, they already did and they had no problem doing it.
Yeah.
Right? I was at a workplace and somebody asked me a very inappropriate question, like across a whole big room with people. It was a very intimate person question. And so I made a sassy comment back and they got kind of red and I was like, yeah. You thought nothing of asking me this intimate question in front of a whole bunch of people? Yes, I said something sassy back. You
Yeah.
brought the discomfort. You didn't think twice of bringing the discomfort to me. I can bring it back to you.
Hmm.
One of them that I always think is funny is when people announce in groups of people of like, we're trying to have a baby. And I always say, so you're having lots of sex. Good for you. Right? Like,
Yeah.
that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
You brought it in. I am just being a good hostess and we're sharing it
I
together.
love that.
Right?
I
So
love
that's
that.
the sass, that's the humor. And because oftentimes if we can reach for humor, then we can see the funny in it and we can
Yeah.
bring our anger down, right? Like I
Mm.
thought it was funny then that that she said that thing to me across a room with a whole bunch of people because I could say something sassy back. And so like I was like, I know you're like you weren't thinking, but like this might help us.
Yeah. Sure.
And
Yeah.
again, not every situation is that appropriate to do.
Right. But
I
it
had a
can
gra
help in some.
yeah, I had a grandmother that used to ask me like, when are you going to get married? And I was finally like, when are you going to die? Like, stop asking me questions I don't have answers to. Like, if you're gonna ask this, then I'm gonna come back at you. Like, I don't know, Grandma. It's not completely within my control,
Yeah, I love
right?
that.
But it gives
Yeah.
that second thought of like,
Yeah.
you just asked me something incredibly invasive and personal, and you
Yeah.
acted like it was okay. So I'm gonna
Yeah.
ask you one back. And you can have fun with it sometimes because there's plenty of times because of power dynamics or safety that is not an option.
Right.
And I would never want to diminish the importance of those situations of where you're like, I have a retort, but I can't say it because I
Hmm.
need this job,
Yeah.
or this person isn't safe and it's going
Yeah.
to escalate it.
Right.
But my grandmother and I had a good laugh about it, right? And she
That's
was like,
awesome.
okay, okay. She goes, that's kind of funny. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, okay,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Well, I think we're about at time, but thank you so much for a lively discussion as always. I
Thank
love
you. It's good to see you.
you too. I love all of our chats. They're just so heartwarming. And I always come away with, what did we call them? I think we called them golden nuggets from America. I think it's
Oh,
I think it's what we called them. Was it? I don't remember if it was here or at our last workplace. So someone said that. Um,
oh,
yeah, I
that's
feel
so
like I always
sweet.
walk away with a golden nugget from you.
That's very
Every time
kind.
I talk.
I secured them from other people, right? Like I got them from other supervisors.
Yeah.
We should all just accumulate and redistribute all of the golden nuggets. But like I learned so many
100%.
things from different professors and supervisors and friends. And so it's like just give them and then give them out to somebody else
Hmm.
and be like, just let's all share.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we all know in this world that we need to be supportive and share. We could all use more of that. Thanks again, and thank you
Thank
for
you.
our listeners. Tune in next time. And we'll see you on our next coffee chat or Ask a Therapist blurb. See y'all next
Okay.
time.